Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, September 10th, 2020. Time for yet another show. And, we're kind of, sort of ready for it. A few things happened yesterday after the show. You know how Trump and Bob Woodward are. They try and keep things from releasing before our show is over so that we can't get an early crack at discussing them with them. You know, this is something that they do on purpose. I don't blame them. You know, they're all trying to make a buck. And guess what? Yeah, that did happen. Someone was trying to make a buck. I saw some interesting explanations if you care to discuss the strategy and or ethics of Bob Woodward having waited 6 months to tell us all that the president actually knew that the pandemic was in fact deadly serious, but didn't do anything about it except downplay it. But perhaps, we might get around to that. I don't know. Kind of a big story. Greg might have something to say about it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. Maybe everything will go away like magic, like a miracle. Much to discuss, of course. And, I think it all stymied Bill as well, although it might have just been the fact that, Portland, Maine is just the kind of place that every once in a while, everything's normal, everything's going along just fine, you're feeding squirrels, nobody's bothering you, and then all of a sudden just your brain gets erased and you got no idea what's going on. And I think it might not even really necessarily be unique to Portland. It happens to all of us. Daily Kos Radio is live now, Bill tells us, and that's really about it. Over to you, Kagro X, because I got nothing. What else are you going to say? I mean, honestly, as I put together the post for this morning on the front page at Daily Kos, it was basically like, what do you want me to tell you? President kind of confessed to mass murder today, and I assume we'll discuss it tomorrow. It might be one of those things. People have always theorized that there might be something that was so overwhelmingly terrible that he did. Some people theorize that there is some magic thing which will lead even his supporters to abandon him en masse. Others say nothing will change that, although maybe slow dissipation of his base is always possible. You never know. These things catch on in different ways. Likewise, I suppose the other end of that spectrum would be there's something so astounding, something so totally dumbfounding for everyone that it just rolls off your back and you just say, there's really, I guess here we are in LOL YOLO, nothing matters territory. Well, I don't think so. This matters. And I suppose it's possible that something could have happened that was so ridiculous on some other subject that we decided to, collectively let it just slide off and roll by without too much more comment. Well, let's say the president of the United States having been credibly accused of rape or sexual assault by 24 or more women, right? And you just say, what are you going to do? However, he picked the bad topic. The hot topic of the pandemic seems to be on everybody's mind at the moment for various reasons. And Greg and I have been discussing that with you for some time. It's the number one thing happening today. All the kids are into it. The kids love it. Basically, it's on everyone's mind. If you have kids at home, then you really have kids at home. You are right now struggling to get them to continue their education online the best you can. And if you're lucky, you're only able to do that with one eye because you've got the other eye on supposedly working from home. That is disrupting everything and everyone in America, and it's very much on their minds, and they're getting very angry about it. And even those who support the president outright or tend to support people like the president are a little bit unnerved they must be unnerved at how the rest of us are reacting to the fact that everyone knows that this thing got effed up. And then to throw in the middle of this, the shipment, the case, a boxcar full of grenades into the middle of all this, that he's just, thought it would be best. I mean, really, honestly, as I said this morning, I guess the summary of it is the brain worms that it takes to say, even if you think he's trying to do the right thing somewhere deep down inside, and I don't know why anyone would think that, oh, I don't want to cause a panic. And that's a thought that enters a normal, competent leader's head occasionally when you've got something on your plate that you could panic about. But the idea that you could calm that panic by saying, okay, so you could downplay things. I think there's a place for, like, well, if I spin it this way, I might not cause a panic, i.e. if I treat it carefully. If I reassure people that the government is doing everything that they can to make sure that they mitigate the circumstances here. But to think I can avoid a panic by saying, well, the global authorities have declared that there's a deadly pandemic that's making its way around the globe, and it's going to land everywhere. What I'm going to tell the American people, the leaders of the free world in scientific innovation, etc., what I'm going to tell Americans is it'll go away. Magic will take care of it, and don't worry about it. The whole thing is under control. I don't know how. I don't know why. It's just going to go away. Warm weather will get rid of it. And I think that probably was calculated to cause a bigger panic than anything you could possibly say. The world is looking to the United States for leadership. And at a moment where they now know that it's wise to doubt that the United States will be able to rise to that occasion. And the president says, what I'll do to reassure everybody is fail to rise to the occasion. So that's just a very narrow view of what came out of yesterday. I mean, that's a tiny point in all of this. Not to mention, of course, that the idea that Donald Trump is, working furiously to avoid causing a panic and whipping up a furor is just ridiculous, because that's all Donald Trump does all day long on any other issue. And it's insane to think that he would react the other way. Okay. Anyway, the whole thing is crazy from top to bottom. And I guess I'll go from the smallest point to the biggest point, which is, again, leader of the country, leader of the free world, nuclear codes, etc. Got to be smart and on your game. This is, I believe, unless I missed another one, this would be Bob Woodward's second Trump book. And the first Trump book, well, imagine. What do you think Trump thought of the first Trump book? He hated it, because all books about Trump are terrible, because Trump is a terrible person. If you document what it is that Donald Trump does and thinks, you're going to have a book that's highly critical of Donald Trump. And he was furious, reportedly, with his first book. And quite honestly, I've already forgotten about Bob Woodward's first Trump book. I'm sure it was awful with respect to how it treated Trump, and that's a great thing. But so Trump knows this, and he knows who Bob Woodward is, and he knows what he does for a living. And he knows that he pissed him off with the first book. And then he says, you know what? I think a dozen taped interviews with you in the White House would be fine. I believe I can spin you into writing a great book about me because I'm a great person. And right there, honestly, that's called disqualified. Too dumb to be president. Possibly maybe in need of institutionalization. Right there. I don't understand how you do that. And quite honestly, that his children allowed him to go through with this is just elder abuse at this point. They're obviously milking the presidency for whatever they can steal, and it doesn't matter to them that their father is being repeatedly humiliated, and they figure it's not their problem. Okay, so from the large to the small, and everything in between is Greg's responsibility. Go. Hi, good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning.
We're just going to lay it all on you.
Let's start with President Trump, who tweeted about 3 minutes ago. Bob Woodward had my quotes for many months. If he thought they were so bad or dangerous, why didn't he immediately report them in an effort to save lives? Didn't he have an obligation to do so? No, because he knew they were good and proper answers, calm, not panic. Now, that's an important response for a variety of reasons. Yes. And, of course, the Woodward tape story is what we're going to start with. I mean, you have to put in perspective, and for you kids out there who don't know who Bob Woodward is, it's Woodward Bernstein from Watergate era, where there were tapes. Yes. And it turns out Bob Woodward is a very establishment Republican light kind of character here. I mean, he does everything by the book. He is just revered by a certain generation of reporter.
Yes.
But is rather conservative leaning. And because of that, that's what gets him access to all of these presidents, including Republican presidents and Supreme Court people and so on and so forth. And so he's had a series of books of what's going on inside, and people talk to him. They open up to him. He listens, he writes it down, and then he publishes it. And in that context, highly well respected. I say in that context because the reaction to Woodward sitting on the information before he put it out in his book, to me, sort of struck me the same way as the arguments about how you cover Black Lives Matter with the New York Times newsroom arguments about a lot of this stuff. Do you take the view from nowhere that it's this side and that side and just try to be selectively neutral, or do you actually cover the news in terms of what's going on? Yeah. Trump shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue, and do you do person shot on Fifth Avenue? Well, the story is that the president said he was going to do it, and then he did it. Yeah, but that seems like it's leaning one way or the other, so we have to do it this way. So if you're a generation younger than the Woodward generation, you look at this and say, of course you shouldn't have sat on this. It's obvious that you should have published this. It's important. And if you're older, it's, well, this is the way he does things. Maybe it turns out he didn't. Maybe he had an agreement, but even without an agreement, if you say to somebody, I'm going to interview over a series of weeks, and I do interview 1, and there's a bombshell. If I publish it right then, there will be no interview 2, 3, 4, or 5. That's the end of the interviews. So if I don't do it, and I get all of the information, first of all, everybody knows Trump's a liar, and Woodward himself said on interview with Margaret Sullivan of the Washington Post, I didn't know if he was lying. He always lies.
Right.
So it takes time to verify some of the stuff that he's telling me.
Yes.
And so that's why I was,
another episode.
The book wasn't ready. You have to work on it until it's ready. So that's his point of view.
Yeah.
And others are, well, a bombshell's a bombshell. They're both correct. They're just looking at it differently. And I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of consternation on the part of the older establishment reporters that the younger reporters just don't see their job the same way as the older guys do.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, that's sort of the way it goes in every profession.
Right. And so I think that's a lot of what's going on there. My point of view is, it's interesting to look at where Woodward is coming from. And I gave you the Margaret Sullivan piece, Should Bob Woodward Have Reported This, where she talks about a lot of this. But the background there is, so Woodward is this incredibly respected icon, and he has tapes. So Trump can't just say it was anonymous. He can't say it was somebody who was disgruntled, an ex-employee who had a grudge. It was his words talking to Woodward on tape. So he can't say
political hit job.
And that's why it's so interesting that this morning is that, well, okay, I understand I can't tell you that you didn't hear what you heard, and I can't tell you you didn't see what you saw. So now I'm going to tell you that what you heard and what you saw isn't what you think. You think it's bad. I'm telling you it's good.
Okay.
Because that's all he has left, and it's really pretty weak sauce.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, that's an approach. I'm a little surprised at that one, quite honestly.
Well, he had nothing else. There is literally nothing else.
Well,
okay, so everybody who kept saying, both sides do it. Trump said that, this and that, but don't forget the Democrats didn't take any of this seriously. Well, in January, Joe Biden wrote an op-ed about how this was serious and you had to take it seriously. And then there's a whole list of other people who said similar things at the time. January 26th, I think, was the date that Biden had his op-ed, and January 27th is the date of one of Trump's interviews with Woodward, talking about how I think it's important, but I'm not going to tell the public I think it's important. So there's no way to get around that. Trump knew, and he didn't tell people. And in fact, he suggested doing the opposite, and his actions and inactions cost lives. There's just no way around that. And the public is only now digesting all of this. Yes. And so the next level of, okay, what does it all mean? There's other stuff in the book. It's not just this, although this is the big one. There's revealing a secret nuclear weapon capability that he told Woodward about that nobody else knows.
Right. That could be fake, too.
And there's also, disparaging remarks about the military, which, by the way, we are now on day 8 of this story that people told me wasn't going to mean much. Today's story is in USA Today. Trump's tensions with the military grow after reports that he disparaged soldiers, generals, another story that's not going away.
Yes.
And I put together what I thought was an interesting USC Dornsife Tracker Poll, which I have at the end of the Skype list I sent you this morning.
Dornsife.
And what I did is I put in the dates of the DNC, the dates of the RNC, the date of the Atlantic article with Jeffrey Goldberg that sparked the military stuff. And then next week, we'll put in the date of the Woodward stuff. There's Thursday today. So it came out yesterday. And then Sunday will be his big 60 Minutes interview. And it looks like, following the graph here, it takes about 4 days for events to show up on this 7-day tracker.
Okay.
So if you look at the DNC, the dates of the DNC, about 4 days later, you start to see Democratic votes start to go up. Then you look at the RNC, and you start to see Democratic votes start to come down about 4 days later. And you look at the Atlantic article published, and then about 4 days later, Democrat votes start to go up again. And right now, there's a 12 to 15 point lead for Biden in the Atlantic article. If that is added on to by the Woodward stuff, and there's no reason to think it won't, and I don't call it the Woodward book, it's the Woodward tapes. It's Trump's own voice, which are going to play to a huge audience on 60 Minutes and be a part of Democratic ads from now until the election. What you're going to see is a slow improvement in Biden's position, maybe, but more importantly, it really stops any possible Trump drifting back. The people who are changing in the polls are the independents, and to a lesser extent the weak R's. And stuff like this, with revelations every day, basically counter the vaccine surprise and the surprises. Everybody at the FDA says, we ain't doing this. Sorry, Trump. Big article in the USA Today about the FDA scientists with their names on it, saying we're only going to follow the science. And this is not the view of the FDA. This is our own personal view. So, a lot of pushback from the scientists there. You have Francis Collins at NIH saying, I won't have any part of rushing a vaccine. Fauci, everybody else, in that particular regard. I'm not in a particular dump on Fauci mood, because what Fauci says is, I didn't hear the president say this stuff. I'm not surprised about that.
He's keeping
Trump is scared of
Fauci
Fauci. I don't think he would say this to Fauci's face. I think he would say it behind his back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be fairly obvious. He's not going to be in the room for those discussions. He knows he can't get rid of him, but he knows everyone knows that he treats him as an enemy. So he's not going to strategize.
So if you're looking at the USC Tracker Poll, you can see about 4 days after the Atlantic article, there is an effect. I think this will have an effect, and I think it all matters. And so there was a slew of polling yesterday, a little bit today, again, all in Biden's favor. And I think that, for example, if you go to the Nate Silver 538 site, and that's the best place to see it, we have today a Kaiser Family Foundation poll, Biden up 5 in the national. USC Dornsife, Biden up between 12 and 15. That's a point better than yesterday. We have in Florida, Benison Strategy Group, Biden up in Florida by 2. We have a bunch of polls that haven't made it to this page yet from AARP that I saw over on Morning Joe, Biden leading in the swing states by reasonable amounts. It looks like he's winning in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, although by a smaller amount. Holding his own and leading slightly in Florida and in North Carolina, leading slightly in Arizona. This is all good news, and it's basically status quo. If you look at the general, who's winning poll right now, Biden is plus 7.6.
General who's winning poll
over Trump, and it was on September 1st 7.0. So over the past week to 10 days, Biden has picked up a half a point. And again, the point is he's winning. Okay, so
Yes.
All he has to do is keep where he is. He doesn't have to add 15 points to where he is. He doesn't have to be up in the polls by 17 points. And, all of it, I think, is important in terms of keeping your position. The other interesting part about the polling, Nate Cohn had an interesting discussion, a long discussion, about shy Trump voters and how they don't exist. But he points out there's two versions of shy Trump voters.
All right.
The idea that shy Trump voters wouldn't tell pollsters what they think by going online and either lying about their position or claiming that they were undecided is ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no data to support it. AARP didn't find it. And anybody who's ever met a Trump voter knows they aren't shy.
Okay. So far,
the other interpretation of a shy Trump voter is simply that maybe they just won't participate in the polls at all. It's not like they would lie to the pollsters.
Yeah, okay.
That's more of a differential non-response than it is a shy Trump voter. And you know what? There's no evidence for that either.
Well, they don't answer the phone.
Nate Cohn points to the panel like USC that I was just going over, USC Dornslife. And Nate Cohn says it's pretty tough to come up with an explanation for how a panel like USC, or Pew also has one, they'd be pretty good in 16, retain many of the same panelists, and then be badly biased in 20. How does that work?
I guess anything.
You get enough Trump voters in 16, but too many Trump-Biden voters in 2020. It would need to be an awfully targeted kind of bias. Trump voters have to become disillusioned and not participate, but the panel would know that. They could see the Trump voters dropping off. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense that these people exist and the panels are unaware.
Yeah, and I guess if they noticed that some significant portion of their Trump supporters were simply not playing anymore, in order to do something, they'd have to go and get more of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise,
so the whole idea that
panels.
Nobody would notice, that's ridiculous.
Okay.
No, I don't think shy Trump voters exist. I just don't think that is a concern.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, in prior years, I guess where it hasn't made much difference, the idea of people avoiding talking to the pollsters was a little easier to swallow, I guess. But now, I guess, given that the favorite thing to do at a Trump rally is to go and confront the press, knowing that they're not going to make you a pundit or anything. It's just you're going to yell at somebody and they're going to get annoyed with you. but they love to do it. But I'm not going to talk to pollsters. They're just not worth it. I would answer the phone and yell at them, I think. But all right, well, better analysis of it really from Nate than my theory. But they love yelling at people, and it's hard to believe they're suddenly getting shy because the people they're angry at are pollsters.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
So Electoral College ratings and Crystal Ball basically have Biden just shy, Democrats 269, Republicans 204, of winning outright the electoral vote. And here are the toss-ups. And if the Democrats are at 269, needing one more, and here are the toss-ups. The toss-ups are Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. You got to feel good about getting one of those four, if not all of those four. All of those four, Trump is losing right now by various degrees, although Florida is always going to be a toss-up. So Wisconsin, I'm actually feeling pretty good about seeing the polling. There was a +4 from MU Law yesterday, but it was a +7 in the registered voters. And that's the biggest registered likely voter split they've had in their polling recently. And again, it may be that these likely voter screens aren't working the way that we think they're going to, because it's going to be a really high turnout and a lot of young voters coming in, a lot of young voters registering, and I'm not sure they pass all the likely voter screens myself.
Maybe they're shy non-voters.
Yeah, well, maybe they're non-shy non-voters. Maybe they're non-shy voters. Here's another article which I think, again, gives you pause in terms of where things are at. Remember, there's only, 56, 57 days left. It's getting close, and people are voting now. They're voting in North Carolina with an overwhelming Democratic lead in the requested ballots. Yes. This is from Politico. Trump's overtures struggle to register with religious voters. New signs point to Trump losing a sizable chunk of his Christian voters, upending his path to re-election.
Okay.
And it's a relatively new poll that I can't find. I find the article about it, but I can't find the poll yet.
Where's the article? Let's see.
But let me put it at the bottom. I put so much stuff in the Skype that it just makes it easier for you to find.
Okay.
There it is.
I see it now.
Right, the online survey, which was commissioned by the left-leaning vote group Vote Common Good and conducted by a team of academic pollsters from USC, Duke University, University of Maryland College Park, and University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, predicts an 11 percentage point swing toward Biden among evangelicals and Catholics who backed Trump in 2016 based on input from both demographics across 5 major battleground states, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Other polls have captured similar gains in Biden's religious support, including an August survey by Fox News that showed the former vice president at 28% support among white evangelicals, up 12 percentage points from exit polls for the Democratic nominee. The cumulative effect of the convention and the way that faith has been woven into Biden messaging, and by the way, I would add the Jerry Falwell fall, speaks to the kinds of numbers we're now seeing, said Michael Ware, who directed faith outreach for President Barack Obama's 2012 reelection campaign. And while Biden's campaign hasn't done everything they could to reach people of faith, according to Ware, he said Trump's blunt messaging on coronavirus and race has created an opportunity for the Democratic nominee to overturn the who shares your value debate that Republicans have been winning. Trump campaign didn't respond to a request for comment, by the way. They finally released their fundraising numbers, which compared to the Democrats in August was pretty anemic. I mean, there's a whole bunch of signs and symptoms out there, including going dark, not having the same kind of money that the Biden campaign has for the stretch run. Looking at the polls, Biden is just flat out winning at the moment. And as Kyle Kondik says, in its conventional wisdom, Biden is clearly winning, but that doesn't mean he has the election locked up. Yes, we know that.
It hasn't started.
I mean, it's not like anybody has said, oh, gee, the possibility that Trump still might win will come out of left field and surprise all of them. That's all anybody talks about.
All right. Well, I guess that was a matter of... We were all a little stymied about how to start the day and report the news today. So he fell back on it.
Although I do have a good one after the break from David Byler from the Washington Post at my urging, talking about the Biden landslide.
Oh, okay. Well, fantastic. I wondered how could it be that he broke through, and now we know. You urged him to do so. So
I did.
Very good. All right. Not a shy reporter syndrome there. That's good news. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the President is a Mass Murderer show here on Netroots Radio. Renaming it just for today. It's a small story. It'll be off the front pages in a matter of hours, I'm sure. Okay, Greg, let's continue on here. You've got a couple.
So Yamiche Alcindor follows up with what we were talking about. President Trump is now saying Bob Woodward didn't report his quotes in real time because Woodward agreed with Trump downplaying the virus.
Yes.
And I'm sure Donald Trump will be watching 60 Minutes to have Woodward confirm all of that.
Yeah, that probably is upcoming momentarily. Bob Woodward, as you know, has no access to the media whatsoever.
Yeah, and remember, part of the background here is that, as you pointed out, there was a book called Rage that Woodward wrote about the first part of the Trump administration, and Trump didn't like it. Woodward asked Trump to comment on the book and be interviewed. Trump refused, and then trashed the book because he wasn't in it.
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons why he definitely wanted to be in this one, and he made sure everybody around him had access to Woodward and that Woodward had access to Trump, and that was the whole point, to make him the central part of the book, which is what makes it so difficult to deny now. And people who, again, know Bob Woodward in the media business, in the reporting business, said Trump's an idiot because, you don't do that with Bob Woodward because he's going to write what you say and it's not going to make you look good. And he's done this for 4 or 5 presidents already, and you know it's, and he's already done it to you. And how could you be so stupid as to sit for a Woodward interview? And who is saying this? It's the people in the White House who said, I knew this was a bad idea, but I couldn't stop him because nobody can stop Donald Trump.
And it's funny, I saw a lot of people reacting to that and just say, I love these stories where something goes terribly wrong and all these people run to the press and say, I knew it was a bad idea, I tried to stop him. But I actually kind of believe that. I mean, I do believe
in this case
that they all very frequently say to themselves, oh my God, what the president's doing is a terrible idea. I should try to stop him, but I can't.
This is terrible. I better ask for a raise.
I don't know. Yeah, I wonder. I
mean, it's just so terrible working here, and it's just so awful. And he's doing such terrible things. It's so hard on me. They have to pay me more to do this.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that is a common response. People say they're not paying me enough to do this garbage. Oh,
yeah,
well,
that's what I'm saying.
Now they
do you quit? No. Do you go public? Good. No. Do you resign in
Trump world?
In protest for moral issues? No.
Yeah, the people who were bad fits for Trump world are gone fairly quickly, and not always because of their morals. Sometimes they're just fired very quickly. But the people who are able to live with anything for money, I guess, are the ones who are left.
Right, and they're the ones who are saying, "Oh, I knew this was going to be terrible. I tried to tell him, and I tried to tell everybody else, and of course, he interviewed me, and I was happy to sit."
By the way, that does not preclude the possibility of being a horrible, horrible person and also leaving the administration and remaining horrible once you're gone.
Or
plenty of room for that.
Staying there and being even more horrible than the people
that's
who left.
Obvious, yes. But you can quit and not redeem yourself. That is possible.
Right. So in any case, again, that's part of the background. And so for Trump to now say, oh, well, he agreed with me. Woodward doesn't agree with you. And part of the story that goes along with all of that is that Trump figured he could schmooze Woodward, convince him to come over on his side, which is ludicrous to think, but doubly ludicrous to think it would be Woodward, and triply ludicrous to think that, okay, well, that's going to be part of the book.
Or to think, I guess, to think that it wouldn't.
Are you trying to bribe me? That's chapter 3.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of chapters to this one. We did get a sampling in there. I don't know if we were, I don't want to interrupt the flow too much, but I at least note for the record that at one point Trump, I guess, gets an opportunity to see whether or not he agrees, whether or not Woodward and he are on the same page. As Woodward poses a question, and it takes him forever to pose this question. It would be infuriating to have a discussion with Bob Woodward. He's very deliberate, which I guess is a good thing. But anyway, colloquially, the way he speaks is very difficult for me to follow along with. But they have a discussion about the Black Lives Matter issues still percolating and percolating even then. And I guess, as was pointed out to me later on, this is actually a conversation that takes place on Juneteenth. Not that I expected Trump to remember that was the day, but where Woodward asks him, about this whole Black Lives Matter protest thing. And don't you feel like there's some sense in which you kind of got to get outside of your bubble to understand where black people are coming from on this? That's the short version of the question. Although Woodward was long-winded, but just as clear. And Trump just says, what? No. What are you, crazy? And not only that, not only do I disagree, but you have to be an idiot to think that there's any validity to what the black people are talking about.
His taped answer, which you can hear him saying, is, what are you talking about? You've drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, my God. That was crazy. But
you've gone over to the other side.
Yeah.
You've gone over to the dark side, the black side.
The conversations
you got to come over
continue.
here with me. I'm on the white side.
Yeah. The conversations continue, and Trump is like, I'm winning over Woodward. I'm going to spin him on this one. It's like one of those fundamental questions
that's
of the day.
All part and parcel of his reaction this morning.
We're in a different universe.
So, how are things going? Again, Biden's winning. This is David Byler in the Washington Post. Joe Biden might win in a landslide. That would make things more complicated.
Yeah.
As I was telling David on the break for the pundits. For weeks, the mantra of the data nerd has been that President Trump can still win re-election. The Democratic nightmare scenario, Trump loses the popular vote but again wins the Electoral College, is very much still on the table. But the same statistical models, you know this has been my mantra for weeks, that show a path for Trump also outline an oft overlooked possibility, but not by us here on Kagro in the Morning, an outright landslide for Democratic challenger Joe Biden. The chance of a massive sweep by the former VP is a reminder that for all the Democrats present this election as a choice between more Trump and return to normalcy, there's another possibility. If Biden turns out voters in numbers that give him a huge victory, the ones that don't show up on likely voter screens, they may well elect a Congress and state officials eager and able to enact a sweeping progressive agenda.
All right.
That would be nice.
Yeah, exactly.
The numbers are clear. The average outcome is 319 electoral votes for Biden. Trump still has a chance in this model, like 1 out of 5, maybe 20%. But in roughly 10% of the models, Biden earned 400 or more electoral votes. In that case, Biden sweeps swing states such as Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Arizona, North Carolina, Wisconsin, all of which I would point out he's winning in, and reaches deep into red territory to get electoral votes from states like Georgia, Texas, Iowa, and Ohio. Ohio is the dark horse there because Biden is actually leading in a lot of Ohio polls. Not all of them. Some of them he's behind. Same as Texas.
Horses behind.
But Ohio has a more recent tradition of actually voting for a Democrat, whereas Texas does not. And Georgia and Iowa are just harder reaches. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't play there. You have plenty of money. It doesn't mean you can't win those states. And, of course, playing there helps you with the down ballot stuff.
Yeah.
But if you had to rank the possibility of winning in those 4 reach states, Georgia, Texas, Iowa, and Ohio, Ohio's probably top of the list, then Texas, then Georgia, then Iowa, probably in that order. Georgia, because Brian Kemp is governor and he cheats.
Yeah, that's bad.
So in the sunniest simulations, Biden wins enough rural white voters to grab deeply Republican states such as Alaska or South Carolina.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting that Lindsey Graham is the one that Tucker Carlson fingered as the person who talked Trump into giving this interview with Woodward. There's a lot in there to unpack.
Why?
Carlson acknowledges that it was a bad move, that it hurts Trump, and he needs somebody to blame. So he's going to blame Lindsey Graham, who's in a tight race with Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. And isn't that interesting?
Sure. Was there evidence? I mean, I hesitate to ask that about Tucker Carlson, but there might be.
Yes.
Evidence. Okay. Yes. So it wasn't his report.
Actually, Graham said it on the first interview. So
I did
it. Of evidence.
Okay. Good. All right. I was just wondering. I mean, it's not impossible
he's
for
right
Tucker
about
Carlson
that
to have evidence. And it sounds plausible. That's the sort of thing that, like Lindsey Graham could give that interview and know how to handle it.
Everybody thought it was a good idea until they thought it wasn't, I think, is one of the stories that came up.
They all thought it was a good idea until they realized, oh, you mean President Trump should
and
give
you
that
mean
interview.
Bob Woodward.
Now,
I thought you meant Bill
about
Woodward,
this.
The guy over from,
that guy's an
the
idiot.
Washington
You can pull
Examiner
anything over on him.
Bob Woodward, wait, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So anyway, in this rosy scenario here, Trump mostly keeps his base Appalachia, the interior West, the rural South, but those states alone don't come close to cracking 200 electoral votes. And the basic political environment makes it clear why the math is suggesting these results. The issues that are most able to swing the polls are volatile: pandemic, economy, protests against police violence and racism, and now and Trump's trying to kill you, which plays in every state.
Oh, I'll write that down.
And in many aspects, out of Trump's control.
Kill you. Yeah.
Suppose progress on a vaccine stalls, and there's, again, plenty of evidence that we're not getting a vaccine before the election, whatever Trump says. The death rate shoots up as Americans grow weary of physical distancing. And by the way, here we are opening schools. There's already some, unfortunately, deceased school teachers that have been reported on this. And the college campuses are having incredible issues because they really didn't plan this well. And now they're going to blame the students, and that's just not going to work. And imagine what would happen if peaceful protesters, such as the NBA players, take the media spotlight from looters and rioters. Events could throw Trump into free fall, whether or not he runs an effective campaign. And by the way, I have bad news for all of you political junkies like me. Campaigns don't matter that much.
Oh. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe
they do for a point or two. It's like get out the vote. Okay, that's good for a point or two. But if you're talking about a 7 or 8 point, lead, that doesn't matter.
All right. Well,
and if Biden did record a 400-plus electoral vote win, the political consequences would be huge, enormous. I might even say bigly. In the Senate, any new member who rides his coattails would serve for 6 years. The breathing room could allow Biden to make significant advances on issues of their choosing. And again, it's going to be all about the Senate, which in turn will be all about the Supreme Court. The long-term benefits might even be more substantial. The state legislators elected in 2020 will play a pivotal role in drawing the next set of congressional state district maps.
Yes.
We made that mistake in 2010, sitting it out. Do not do that.
Yes. Can't emphasize that enough, although I guess I'll have to wait to emphasize that some more.
Right. This election is often cast as a straightforward choice. Will voters make Trumpism the permanent dominant strain in our politics, or do they want to return to Obama-era normalcy? It's not that simple. A stinging rebuke to Trump and the desire to heal the nation may not be compatible, especially with Biden's campaign relying on the most progressive platform in modern history to excite voters. That means if young voters show up and put him over the top, he owes them. And that's fine. That's a good position to be in.
I mean, right. That doesn't always,
it's the old FDR. I agree with you. Now make me do it.
Yes, that's true. I should at least remember that you don't get to claim as big and as coarse-grained an event as winning that election as like, okay, well, great. Now I just leave my ticket here and someone will come around and redeem it for me.
Yeah, well, the other side of the coin, again, is to not make the mistake that Occupy made back in the day.
Oh?
Which is to not participate in politics and then say, well, you owe us. No, we don't. You didn't do anything to help us.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, but we were on the moral side of it. Yeah, moral schmoral. What did you do to help me win?
Pushed the conversation.
That's very nice. What did you do to help me win? You didn't? Okay, bye.
Yeah. Well, there's an argument that you could make. You gotta make it, and then of course you gotta win it. And it's not guaranteed that just by making it persuasively you'll win either. But there's a lot more work to be done after.
You want the metaphor? It's when you and I were, at the Austin. Daily Kos. That was the last of the Daily Kos years, I think, before it was Netroots Nation. Or the first of the Netroots Nation. I can't remember anymore. Anyway, you and I were in the arena in Austin, and Occupy was outside and didn't want to participate.
Ah, okay.
And that was the metaphor.
It costs money to get in there, so, yeah, true. Although, wise idea, at least, if you don't have the money to buy the tickets, position yourself outside.
Yeah, all three of you.
Well, okay. There were more later. Not in Austin, but elsewhere.
Could have negotiated to come in, but the point is they didn't want to come in.
Maybe. Yeah, or didn't want to negotiate. I don't know which. And really, honestly,
that is not how you put together political coalitions to win. That's my point, and it's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes.
Anyway, it's not that Occupy was wrong in Warren. It's not that they didn't have issues. They did. But if you want to enact political change, you're going to have to be an activist in politics.
That seems
and not just an advocate from outside.
Yeah, I understand not wanting to get your hands dirty, but what do you have hands for, quite honestly? Get some soap. What's wrong with you? Do some work. Right. Okay.
So, take a look at this Politico. Trump is at war with the shallow state. The most damaging revelations about this president come not from the shadowy bureaucrats, but from the people closest to him. I think if you took a poll, I haven't seen one, but I think if you took a poll of people who have worked with Trump, Biden probably wins 60-40. For years, President Trump and his allies have warned against his adversaries in the deep state. Recent days have made it clearer than ever the real hazard is the shallow state. The people saying mean things about Trump aren't lurking in the shadows. They're well-known names whom Trump recruited to work by his side. Their motives aren't mysterious, they're obvious. A transactional president encourages transactional behavior, and these sources have shocking stories to tell, but no longer any genuinely surprising ones. That's why the Woodward book is shocking but not surprising. Again, David Frum, we talked about yesterday, wrote about the military. We know it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, with this Woodward book, we know it's true. We saw him do it.
Yeah.
We saw him say to his people in Tulsa, go and don't wear masks.
Yeah.
And if you die, too bad.
Right. Sorry, Herman.
And
not even, really.
Herman died.
Yeah, what do you have to say about Herman Cain dying? I don't know.
What does Trump have to say about that? That's too bad. I hope his Twitter account keeps going.
I guess. Did he ever? I must have made some kind of comment. Well, I say that because that's a normal thing to do, but maybe he didn't.
So the plot, says Politico, is playing out in familiar ways.
Okay.
Prominent people typically went to work for Trump thinking he seemed like a jerk, but hey, he was elected after all.
Right.
So they calculated that maybe he's not so bad, and the compensation and power and status of an important job were worth the trade.
Right.
They believed the Republic would be better off with their wise counsel helping curb Trump's worst instincts, so they write books and like the senior military officers who told damaging tales to the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg. Oh, look, that story is still there.
What?
8 days later, and we're still talking about the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg story. Or just remember, everybody told me it didn't matter. Or dispatch surrogates to do so. Above all, they sit with Washington's legendary confessor priest, Bob Woodward, for his new book, Rage. Yes. The first book was called Fear. The entire notion of the deep state rests on soil tilled by Hollywood in decades of movies and TV shows in the genre of the paranoid thriller, and in these conspiracy dramas, the plot tension flows from a slowly building, creepy realization that things are not what they seem. Okay, and Woodward delivered the goods, and his source was not a latter-day deep throat skulking around garages on behalf of the deep state. The most damaging source for Woodward is Trump himself on tape.
Yes. I don't know. I have anything to add to that.
I mean, that's why it's just not going away. As a journalist, this is, was this John Harris, probably?
Yes.
Yes, John F. Harris writing. It's his style.
F. Harris.
F. Harris. That's what I always say. As a journalist, I certainly have no interest in making censorious judgments about people's reasons for speaking their truths, but there's no need to assign valorous motives to decisions that often seem to have more prosaic explanations: self-interest, vanity, revenge, and so on. In some cases, and don't forget, Mark Felt was a revenge thing. With all the myth about Watergate, Felt was pretty pissed that he was looked over for a promotion, and that's why he was spilling the beans.
A disgruntled employee.
Exactly.
Wow. In
some cases, one suspects that loathing of Trump is so merged with self-loathing for investing hope in Trump or ever believing that joining a circle would be a worthwhile transaction. Mary Trump has offered valuable insights into what seems to be the president's dysfunctional upbringing, but she also makes plain she was wounded by family disputes over her grandfather's will. Mattis joined the Trump administration at the beginning and can plausibly say he thought he was performing a patriotic duty, but Bolton joined the White House in April 2018, a year after Trump had fired his first FBI director and publicly humiliated his first attorney general, and months after he had warned on Twitter his nuclear button is much bigger and more powerful than North Korea's. In other words, Bolton is a worse figure than Mattis.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Not patriotic
Bolton
duty,
just took the job anyway. No problem. But no doubt, like many of Woodward's sources, he can't claim that his subsequent disillusionment came with no warning or context.
Yes.
It could be that Trump understands the transactional nature of the shallow state better than the people who aim to take him down. So that's probably all true. I mean, these are not good people. It doesn't mean that their words don't have impact. Again, for those of us who are anti-Trump and always have been, there's nothing here we don't know. It's just that it's verified. And the fact that it's verified by Woodward and therefore it's true with a capital T when it wasn't before seems kind of silly to us.
Yes.
But if you're a journalist who reveres Bob Woodward, it carries weight. So if you're a conservative who reveres John Bolton, his words carry weight, even though we know who he is.
Yes. Those are
it's just the way that those things work. So you can't disparage all of it as, look at the people who work with him. Of course, they're the people who are saying bad things. That's because they're bad people saying bad things. That's Trump's claim now. But again, it's the cumulative small effects. I may not be a Mattis fan, but I'm a Bolton fan. I may not be a Bolton fan, but I really respect, some guy I never heard of who was the chief of staff who saw everything. I don't trust any of them, but I trust Bob Woodward. Everybody has a different, this is the thing that made me pay much more attention. Plus, when you play Trump's own voice, that matters.
Yes,
and I forget who the...
he could deny it's him.
I forget who the journalist... It could have been Ron Fournier, but I don't want to say I know this for sure. Somebody was telling the story of their parent in the Nixon Watergate days, where their staunchly Republican parents defended Nixon, defended Nixon until the tapes came out. And then it was like, I can't do this.
Okay.
He did it.
I mean, those were the days. Now, of course, deep fake.
But there's always somebody. It doesn't have to be, 75% all of a sudden turn. It's Biden's already got a 7.5 point lead.
Yeah.
You make one more point, 2 more points, and make it 9. Now you're talking about that David Byler landslide. That's why all of this stuff matters now. Again, don't look for all of a sudden Trump's base to desert him. That's not what we're talking about. If it's true that he's losing 12% of his evangelical conservative Catholic base, that's where you're going to see it, not in the general overall numbers. And so you might have people who say, I still support him. I'm just not voting for him. I mean, I agree with his, I'm going to say he's doing a good job. Just don't really feel motivated to vote.
Yeah, I guess that can happen. Well, I'll hope for it, I guess. Man, all right. Well, each one of those is sort of a narrow slice, I think. I mean,
yeah. Well, these are all narrow slices, but that's what happens. You get accumulation of narrow slices. The other place that you should take a look at isn't just the head-to-heads, but also his approval rating. His approval rating went up a little bit. It was somebody pointed out to me on Twitter. It was -15 before the conventions. It went up to -8 at the end of the RNC. Now it's back down to -10 and dropping. Mm-hmm. And so, you see whether or not those things have an effect on the accumulation of favorables and job approval. For Biden, his favorables went up after the Democratic National Convention, even though there wasn't a major, bump for him in the polls. So again, you see it in more of these subtle things. And the bottom line, of course, is who's going to win in the end. None of this matters unless you get out there and vote. So there's still plenty of work to do. But I'm just trying to make the point that all of these things have a cumulative effect, and they stop the other side from mounting a counteroffensive, and we only have like 56, 57 days left.
Yeah.
Less than that in those who are going to go out and vote early.
True, right? In North Carolina, it might all be over for them.
Right. So anyway, that's my roundup and story for today.
Okay, that's pretty good, given that, President's a mass murderer and stuff. Quite honestly, keeping on schedule, this is a major
accomplishment. As we say in Brooklyn, you do what you can with what you got.
Oh.
Oh, one more I should throw in here just because it's like so incredibly stupid. People point out she's not stupid, she's just evil. Okay, I can't argue with that. South Dakota governor defends Sturgis rally-goers exercise their personal freedom to attend and therefore exercise their personal freedom to go infect every other state and kill you.
Freedom. Yeah, that's true. Right. Palin Jr., angling for, I guess she's planning on running for president on the, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Or at least VP.
Something. Freedom. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, who would pick her? Well, I guess next time around. Yeah. So.
Meanwhile, here's the South Carolina third grade teacher, 28, dies from COVID-19. Last in the classroom less than 2 weeks ago. Diagnosed with the virus on Friday, died Monday, and came in for workshops.
Oh, didn't even teach.
During a week of teacher workdays before the school year began, started teaching the following week from home. And is tracing anybody who had close contact with her. I mean, that's a tragedy, but it's going to be repeated, I'm afraid. And, yeah, Trump is responsible. Now, here's another piece of interest from Kaiser Family Foundation.
Yes.
Most Americans worry.
Yeah.
Period.
Well,
stop there. Most Americans worry.
Right.
Most Americans worry political pressure will lead to premature approval of a COVID-19 vaccine. Half say they wouldn't get a free vaccine approved before Election Day.
Okay.
So if Trump pushes it too fast, the public won't accept it.
Yeah.
And if they won't accept it, they're not going to accept that Trump just created a silver bullet.
Yeah, well, I mean, who could, I don't know who could have done it before this round of stories, but now where it's like, well, yeah, I didn't tell people it was in fact deadly poison. I didn't want to cause a panic.
Right. And here's like another one. Public trust in CDC, Fauci, and top health officials is evaporating. This is from Stat News.
I guess Trump considers that a victory.
The poll from the nonpartisan Kaiser Family Foundation finds the public's trust in the CDC and the U.S.'s top doctors like Fauci is rapidly dropping, particularly among Republicans. It finds a sizable percentage of Americans still hold a number of incorrect beliefs about the pandemic, and less than half of Americans surveyed would want to get vaccinated against COVID-19. If a vaccine was available before November, August 28th to September 3rd were the poll dates, and it provides a striking glimpse in how the U.S. government's chaotic response to the coronavirus pandemic is sowing distrust among both Republicans and Democrats and reveals growing partisan divides about reliable sources of health information. Mm-hmm. Public confidence in the CDC dropped 16 points since April. Agency has been widely criticized both by public health advocates who want the agency to more frequently stand up to political pressure and by Trump, who's accused of being overly cautious. Trump's critiques hit harder. Republicans' confidence in the CDC dropped 30 points since April. Democrats' trust in the CDC has dropped less, from 86 to 74 over the same period. And CDC and Redfield, Director Robert Redfield, aren't the only ones. Trust in Fauci has declined 10%. His favorables dropped nearly 30% among Republicans. Democrats' confidence, meanwhile, has increased from 80 to 86.
Sure.
And the public writ large still trusts Fauci to provide reliable information more than it trusts the CDC, the White House coordinator, Deborah Birx, President Trump, or Biden. Trump is the least trusted out of the four. 40% of those trusted say they trust Trump. 52% trust Biden.
Okay. That's the way we want
Misconceptions. Half of Republicans surveyed still believe hydroxychloroquine is effective. 20% of people, regardless of party, believe wearing a mask is harmful for your health. And 14% falsely believe there's a cure. That's not bad, considering how many people believe in angels and that we never went to the moon.
I guess that's true, by comparison.
62% of Americans are worried the FDA will rush to approve a coronavirus vaccine due to political pressure. Yes. Those findings track closely with the Stat-Harris poll survey, which found 78%, same thing. And a large portion of Americans would decline a vaccine if it's approved before November. So there's every reason to wait until December, and it's not going to be ready before December. But even if it were, you're still better off waiting for December.
I guess so.
Get past the election. Don't make it an election issue. Yeah. And Trump wants to make it an election issue, and that's ridiculous, and the Republic is rejecting that. So I don't think that's going to be his October surprise.
Well, I don't think it will work as an October surprise.
Well, that's what I mean. He's going to try. He's going to try everything. He's going to try every possible thing.
Right. Okay. Well, let's see if we can't influence him to try again. By the way, I think probably...
Oh, yes. It was Joe Scarborough.
Oh?
Whose father was the Republican who finally was convinced by the tape. Thank you. Karen SF reminds us. Yes, I heard that on Morning Joe. Scarborough tells that story time and time again. And it was like, nothing can convince you, nothing can convince you, nothing can convince you, and then all of a sudden you get convinced. So that was Joe Scarborough's dad, the staunch Republican who's where tapes made the difference. And tapes can make the difference here. And
they can. We'll see. Old school, but it can work. I guess, okay, Boomer, you believe tapes? Ha! I think it's Q planting those.
Well, they're 8-tracks, so you have to believe.
I guess that's only a very small, select portion of the population going to be able to hear those tapes.
Yeah. And they were on beta, not VHS.
Thanks, Greg. That's all right. Thank you for wrapping everything up. Yeah, I guess we'll catch you next week when we find out that Trump is eating whole planets.
Yeah.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netflix Radio. Yes, so we'll continue with the story that the president is a mass murderer. Thank you, Karen, for weighing in with the information about it being Scarborough. What's Joe Scarborough's father's name? Do we know? I mean, I assume he's unless he's extraordinarily elderly gentleman has since passed, but I don't know. I'm a little bit curious. I can't see what possible bearing it has on the story. I just thought I would ask. If anyone has it, I don't know. Satisfy my curiosity. Okay, let's see. So how to even approach a day like today? I don't know. There was more that came out during the interviews and other stories that didn't have anything to do with the interviews, but would likewise, otherwise, I guess, have been gigantic bombshells on any other day, but they were overwhelmed by these bombshells. Let's see. There was, as we mentioned, the portion of the tapes during which Trump basically laughs off. You can almost barely make out finally an actual laugh. You don't hear a laugh out loud from Trump a whole lot. Some people say they've never heard him laugh. But he's almost laughing at Woodward's, I mean, I don't know what to say. He's laughing at Woodward's proposition that there's even some validity to the Black Lives Matter protests and movement. And it's insane that I really kind of thought, I don't know why I thought he would give a normal answer to that. I guess because I thought it was such an elementary and easy answer to give, to say, well, sure. I mean, even to deny them the fact that they're right about things, a Republican typically would say, sure, look, they have a point. There's certainly a point that can be made by their protest movement. They're just going about it the wrong way, which is the usual excuse that they give for everything. And as you know, I mean, that's infuriating and an issue all by itself. Well, they're going about it the wrong way. Kneeling when the national anthem is being sung and the flag is out is wrong. all right, well, how about if we just stand silently on the sidewalk here? Well, blocking the sidewalk is wrong. So it doesn't matter what you do. There was no validity to their insistence that their methodology was wrong. It's just something that they always do. And I just figured he'd fall back on that. I guess if you told me ahead of time, like, okay, what do you think Trump's response is going to be? I probably would say, well, yeah, he'll say, if he's cornered and asked directly like that in a one-on-one interview, he'll probably say, well, yeah, sure, they have a point, but they don't know what they're doing. They're going about it all wrong. They're turning people against them. They're counterproductive. And then I guess if you warned me, if you stopped and said, well, before you go too far into this answer, let me remind you, I am talking about Donald Trump here. And I have the answer on record. I know what it is. I'm asking you if you can guess it, and you're going down the path of rationality, and I want to caution you against that. I'd say, I take your point. Okay. Did he really, though? Did he really just say, yeah, they're all crazy. I hate those people. Something like that, maybe? Yeah, that was it. Well, there's more, although I guess they didn't emerge from this book, Rage, that what's his name? Bob Woodward was writing. This is from another book that we're all, I think, long since fatigued at hearing about. Plus, of course, it comes from a guy who is, ultimately, I think, still an irredeemable a-hole, but he's working very hard at redeeming himself regardless, and it'll work in part for some people. We're listening to what he has to say anyway. It's Michael Cohen. Still teasing his book, and I'm sure this was always part of the plan. Bit by bit, he would drip out this terrible information about Donald Trump, and make small splashes along the way. And some days there'll be a slow news day, there'll be bombshells, and other days they'll be overwhelmed by other bombshells. But this is the Trump era, and the likelihood of capturing the news cycle out from under him is very small. But just to add this into the file of bombshell stories coming out from books and the file of Trump hates black people in general and will do anything to disparage them. We had this story. NBC News reporting in conversation, I guess, about the book with Michael Cohen. Here's the headline they put on it. He was no leader. And we're not talking about Trump here, although that is certainly true. He was no leader. South Africa denounces Trump's reported comments about Mandela. So we're now, moving towards like, I hate the Pope and Mother Teresa is terrible. I hate the military, et cetera, right? Buzz Aldrin is a jerk. What other bad thing? George Washington is, the king is a fink. I don't know. He's crazy. How did South Africa even find out about this? I have no idea. But it happened. So they found out about it and they denounced it. Ready? The president's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, writes in a new book that people read in South Africa that his ex-boss, that's Trump, said the Nobel laureate, not Trump, even though he's been nominated again. That was in the news. We're talking about Nelson Mandela. What did he do, Mandela? According to Trump, he effed the whole country up. Yeah, so that's pretty good. This is an Associated Press story being carried on NBC's news channels here. And Dateline to Johannesburg. The report that U.S. President Donald Trump made crude, disparaging remarks about Nelson Mandela. I can't believe you're reading the sentence. South Africa's Nobel Peace Prize winning former leader has drawn an angry response from South Africa's ruling party and others, and we missed it entirely, which is amazing. According to a book written by Michael Cohen, which we already forgot about, Trump's former personal lawyer, that's Cohen, Trump said that Mandela, who guided South Africa in its politically fraught transition from a racist apartheid government to a democracy, was a terrible leader. Cohen wrote that after Mandela's death in 2013, Trump said, "I'm hungry, give me something to eat. I want 2 scoops of ice cream." But then after that, I guess he said, Mandela effed the whole country up. Now it's a S-hole. Remember how he was calling things S-hole countries? I guess this is where it started in 2013. Mandela effed the whole country up. Now it's a S-hole. F Mandela. He was no leader. I shouldn't be laughing, obviously, but I'm laughing at the absurdity of it. Like, it's not just that Trump says, I really disagree with Mandela. I love apartheid. I hate black people. I think they should be subjugated around the world. And the South Africans are the last ones in the world to still have it right. And I can't believe it went south on them. Like, that would be insane. But if you said, no, we got to get it to where, like, even whatever, I don't know, even racist South Africans might not agree with you. You got to say, that's right, the country's a S-hole. They F the whole thing up. I don't know, maybe that wouldn't turn racist South Africans against them. But it just, if you needed to parody the response, that's how you would do it. And sure enough, there it is. Mandela, who won the Peace Prize in 1993 along with apartheid leader, believe it or not, remember that he was a partner in this, Frederick Wilhelm de Klerk, you remember F.W. de Klerk, is widely revered by all racial groups in South Africa. I'm sure you could find a South African who would say, not me, but probably in an Afrikaans accent. Internationally, he generally has a glowing reputation as a skilled statesman who avoided a nationwide bloodbath as the country abandoned apartheid. If you have to encapsulate Nelson Mandela in a single sentence for people who never knew or very young and missed the whole thing, generally he has a glowing reputation as a skilled statesman. F that guy. The report about Trump's comments could also impact the U.S. presidential election in November, maybe, in which Trump is seeking a second term in office, angering not only black Americans, but white voters who see Mandela as a peace icon. And basically, I would say any voter of any color anywhere who's been a citizen of the world at any point during the last 30 years. South Africa's ruling African National Congress Party said Tuesday that Trump is not fit to comment on Mandela's accomplishments. That's certainly true. They say it in strident terms. It's not necessary to the story, but let's give them the rhetoric here. All freedom, because it's good. All freedom-loving people of the world are appalled by these insults. Yep, that's it. Which came from a person who himself is not a model of competent leadership. Also true. They added, Trump is the most divisive, misogynistic, and disrespectful person ever to be president of the United States. Also true. And they did not owe us misogynistic in that context either. Nelson Mandela was a man. But it's also true that Trump is misogynistic. It's not necessarily demonstrated by his comments here, but we appreciate the thought. The ANC very thorough in it. So I think it was worth doing. They raised our consciousness level with their comment on this. Mandela's dedication to peace and a just society stands in stark contrast to Trump's policies, said the ANC. The mark of a true leader is not how many enemies you create, but how many friendships you cultivate, even where strong differences of opinion exist, said the ANC, adding that if Mandela were alive today, he would reach out to Trump to discuss international issues. He probably would, and I don't know how long he'd keep doing that. He's either a fool or a saint, and the answer there would depend on how long he spends trying to reach out, and I guess where you stand on this. Like, if you just think infinite patience is saintly, as many people do, then I guess that just burnishes his figure, his wings, his halo that way, I guess. Whereas other people would say, you're wasting your time. And you have so little of it left. You're 115 years old at this point. The Nelson Mandela Foundation also criticized Trump for the insulting remarks about Mandela attributed to him by Cohen, who has been convicted of fraud and perjury. So I guess that's a good point. You want to throw that in there too. We do not believe that leaders who conduct themselves in the way Mr. Trump does are in a position to offer authoritative commentary on the life and work of Mandela. Of Madiba, which is Mandela's clan name. So very interesting that they went that way. I didn't catch that at first. Let's see. Trump could learn from Mandela, said the foundation. Now, that might not be true, but it's aspirational, and it was nice of them to say that he could learn from Mandela, quoting South Africa's first black president as saying, a good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end, he and the other side must be closer and thus emerge stronger. You don't have that idea when you are arrogant, superficial, and uninformed, which is, of course, to say that Trump cannot learn from Mandela, but they're being very hopeful here. It's nice of them to say. Let's see. Trump deny the whole thing? Yeah. I've discussed South Africa with President Trump many times, and he has only ever spoken positively about the country, said who? U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Lana Marks. She rings a bell, too. Is she a Mar-a-Lago person? I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I mean, she's the ambassador now, so she can't really say anything disparaging. Yeah, but my recollection is that she, not her name, but that we once read that he appointed a Mar-a-Lago maven, who, as I recall, was like a purse designer, well, not like Ivanka. Ivanka steals her designs, but a fashion type maven. And why she got South Africa, I'm not really sure, but I mean, I guess you can draw your own conclusions there. But I'm pretty sure that she was called out that way, that we learned about her. Yeah, there we go. I'm just checking it out. That's true. Palm Beach Daily News says it's true. There's the memory for you. Mar-a-Lago member Lana Marks returns to South Africa as a U.S. ambassador. Just, you want to guess? I mean, like I said, I didn't give it away by saying that she was a Mar-a-Lago member, right? Returns to South Africa. I guess she's got a background in South Africa. Generally speaking, two large ethnicities occupying the territory of South Africa. Is she white or is she black? Yeah, okay. She's white and returning to South Africa as U.S. ambassador, and maybe, possibly bearing some of the same resentments as Donald Trump, given that that's who appointed her. But there's the answer. Palm Beach couture handbag designer Lana Marks has arrived in South Africa to begin serving as U.S. ambassador, making Marks the fourth member of Mar-a-Lago, President Donald Trump's private club, to be tapped for a top diplomatic post. Story all by itself, really. 4 of them. Marks arrived in South Africa on Saturday. That would be back in November of 2019. A month after she was sworn in by U.S. District Judge Robin L. Rosenberg on October 11th at the federal courthouse in West Palm Beach. Marks, a native of South Africa, there you are, fills a position that had been vacant since December 2016. So that's because Trump thinks it's an S-hole country and basically left the ambassadorship vacant for 3 years because it's so important to him. And then he's like, I don't know who I can send to South Africa. It's an S-hole country. Oh, my God. I'll go look down in Mar-a-Lago and see. I'm sure I have some, emigre South African white people in my club. Right? I mean, it's a small place, relatively speaking. Where can I find an ex-apartheid, a pre-Mandela South African refugee who I could appropriately send back as a Trump administration ambassador? This is unfair. She might be a perfectly good partner in, post-apartheid politics in South Africa. I really don't know. But the handbags, for instance, give me no indication that that's something I should hope for. What does? I don't know. Nothing. I'm just being honest here. All right. Marks, 65, is the fourth member of Trump's private club, Mar-a-Lago, that he's tapped for an ambassadorship, but she is only the second to accept the job. That's funny. So there are Mar-a-Lago members who are like, yeah, I'll be right there. Thanks. That's pretty funny. Okay. Let's see. Anyway, let's see. Other club members recruited by Trump for top diplomatic posts include, there's more. I thought this was the end of the article. Robin Bernstein. I didn't realize I was going to go this direction. That's the fun of the show. Robin Bernstein, a founding member of Mar-a-Lago. Wow, founder. That's like from the 1700s or something, right? Mar-a-Lago's been around for a long time. Founding member of Mar-a-Lago and staunch supporter and defender of the president as ambassador to the Dominican Republic. My guess there is that Bernstein has got a vacation home in the Dominican Republic, probably on the very famous golf course there. What's the name of that? I can't remember the name of the course there, but a lot of wealthy folks with vacation homes there. And he probably said, oh, yeah, I'll take an ambassadorship. But where do you want to go? Dominican Republic, I guess. I have and I'm sure Trump was like, wow, fantastic. That's an S-hole I never really thought I would be able to fill the position for. Why there? I might not even have asked. He might not even give a crap. But the answer would be, I have a vacation home there. Total speculation. But check me. Let me know. Google the guy. Robin Bernstein. See if you can find out. Philanthropist Patrick Park is the next person, who once claimed that most of the 200 fundraisers that he hosted were at Mar-a-Lago. For who? I don't know. They weren't all for Trump, I don't think. But anyway, he was picked as ambassador to Austria, but cited family responsibilities when he turned down Trump's invitation. So I'm not certain what the connection to Austria there is, but it wasn't strong enough to draw Patrick Park away from his responsibilities to his lovely family. Brian Burns, a major Trump donor, was also named an ambassador and declined the post to Ireland. Brian Burns. Who did we end up sending to Ireland? I can't remember now. Anyway, he declined to go for health reasons. Interesting. I guess, what if Leprechaun stole his Lucky Charms and he had to chase after him? His heart's in no condition for this, something like that. Burns is also founding chairman of the Palm Beach Policeman's Ball that has loyally held its event at Mar-a-Lago for years. That's another thread to tug at. We've talked for a long time about the Palm Beach Police Association's weird connection with Mar-a-Lago and Trump's weird connection with them, and about how one time, what it was like 2009, where he suddenly felt compelled, he just had to get a hold of someone else's $150,000 and donate it to them, toot sweet, and then never donate to them again. And yet, for some other reason, the police association has felt compelled to hold their fundraiser at great expense at Mar-a-Lago ever since. That seems weird. Okay, Scott has done some additional research on Lana Marks. I guess we might as well go down this path. I mean, quite honestly, we certainly could easily have spent the day raging about what else was in the interview and other stories, but this is as interesting a bent as any. Quite honestly, no one's probably going to be going down this path today. Who's the fourth one, though? Right. It was, what's her name? Lana Marks. And he just sent me another thing about Lana Marks we might take a look at here if we can get into it. I think it's paywalled in Haaretz, which is usually paywalled, but sometimes you can put that into Pocket and get around it. Other Palm Beach Republicans scored appointments after making substantial contributions to Trump and GOP causes, such as Duke, I don't know how he says it, Buchan, Buchan, Duke Buchan III, which makes, I don't know whether, that sounds like Duke Nukem. Wasn't that like a video game character or something? Duke Buchan, maybe, III, who along with his wife, I don't know whose money it was, donated $898,000 to the Trump Victory Committee. He, Buchan, is the U.S. ambassador to Spain and Andorra, which makes sense. It's not like necessarily a double. Andorra's a little teeny micro state there. Makes good sense. Horrible shape they're both in with COVID-19. I wonder whether Duke is in danger there. Marks, however, appears fairly apolitical. This is the Palm Beach Daily News assessment of her in 2019. We'll see whether Haaretz agrees. Her only campaign contributions came in 2012 when she donated $2,000 to Mitt Romney. Marks is best known for her six-figure handbags clutched by red carpet celebrities like Charlize Theron, who's probably going to give that up now, Angelina Jolie, and Kate Winslet. So I guess that relationship comes to an end. But she's busy now. She's ambassadoring and not designing handbags, unless she's just stealing designs like Ivanka. Other individuals with connections to Palm Beach County serve in high posts in the Trump administration. Trump's fellow Palm Beacher Wilbur Ross, we all know he lives down the street, right? He heads the Commerce Department nominally. He's been asleep for 3 years, which is amazing. The Palm Beach Gardens resident Ben Carson I didn't realize he lived down there too. Is Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. So good points made there, and I'm glad to have them. Let's see. I have this Haaretz article is on my phone. Let me put it in pocket. One, so I can transfer it to a bigger screen, and two, so I can get around the paywall if necessary. Sorry, Haaretz, but I just don't have it in me to subscribe. They may have successfully blocked it this time. They found out my trick. Let's see. All right. Well, this one's not paywalled, so that's great. Maybe I have the wrong publication in mind. The Long Strange Journey of Lana Marks, Trump's pick for South African ambassador. I didn't mean to get into a long journey here, but I'm kind of curious. The daughter of a Jewish property developer. Again, this is in Haaretz. Like if this was being published in, if it was being published, say, in Stormfront, I'd have a different feeling about just making the subheader, the daughter of a Jewish property developer. But Haaretz, it's a point of pride. Marx's story has included leaving Bermuda under a cloud of anti-Semitism. Interesting. She's really had it rough, don't you think? South Africa, flee South Africa, move to Bermuda, leave Bermuda, move to Palm Beach. It's been tough for her. What else has happened? She's won a bronze medal for tennis. That's nice. And becoming a handbag designer to the stars. You are a handbag designer, you are. That's all right. Well, I had a different bag in mind, but let's see. Here's a photo of her with one of those little clutch purses at the 2008 annual Elton John AIDS Foundation Academy Awards viewing party at the Pacific Design Center in West Hollywood, California. She's really just a hard Scrabble case, isn't she? President Donald Trump's pick as the next U.S. ambassador to South Africa. This is a piece, like I said, from Haaretz in, what's the date on this one? 2018, November 2018. So his pick as the next U.S. ambassador to South Africa has been criticized for lacking diplomatic experience. That would be a valid criticism. But while the life story of 65-year-old Lana Marks may not involve formal training in government relations, it doesn't lack for international intrigue. All right, I'll give a few minutes to this. Marks is the fourth member of Trump's exclusive Palm Beach club, Mar-a-Lago, to be tapped for a role in his administration. His choice of Marks, whom he has known for 23 years, has been rumored for months, and the vetting process has taken more than a year. If confirmed by the Senate, and I guess she'll be filling that role. It would have been empty since the beginning. Deeply honored, etc. South African-born luxury handbag designer. Told Haaretz in a brief telephone interview. However, she said she was not discussing in the media her nominations or qualifications for the job pending her confirmation hearing. All right. It was the most dramatic chapter in Marx's life that first brought her to Palm Beach in the 80s, an incident in which she charged the island nation of Bermuda of anti-Semitism after she and her husband were forced to leave the country. In 1982. I mean, Bermuda's a pretty friendly place. In 1982, Marks, then 29, and her husband, Dr. Neville Marks, 43, were charged with All right, I gotta quit. Sorry. Charged with immigration violations. Oh, no. And those bastards in Bermuda wanted strong borders. Very strongly wanted the strong borders. And guess what? They were found guilty on 2 counts of submitting false immigration documents for employing Lucia King, a nanny, who, everybody needs a nanny if you're an international handbag designer and flitting about between the United States and South Africa and Bermuda. You're going to have a nanny. Does it set off any alarms for any of you? Like I said, South African born, left South Africa. Not like, let's stick around and build the new South Africa. Let's leave South Africa. Let's move to Bermuda. Let's falsify our immigration documentation. If you move to Bermuda, a beautiful place. I've been there twice. Honeymoon and 20th anniversary, right? Great place to go. Fantastic place. And the sort of place that if you visit it once, twice, you would say to yourself, if I were a billionaire, and I guess she is, or maybe a millionaire, I would absolutely buy a home here. like the other guy in Dominican Republic. And I would love to live here. A fantasy of mine would be to have a home here. It's very, very difficult to buy like expensive fantasy real estate in Bermuda. Bermuda's pretty crowded, and they have some strict laws about selling major properties to non-citizens, non-citizens, because they, would like for their citizens to have homes first. They were actively trying to avoid rich Americans and rich international jet setters from just buying up places and keeping them inaccessible to anybody to live in, just hogging the land while they lived elsewhere for most of their time. So it's a tough thing to do. We'll get right back to it after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, well, I'll continue with the interesting story here in Haaretz, but I flipped back to see if I could find out a little bit more about Robin Bernstein, who got the ambassadorship to the Dominican Republic. I wasn't immediately able to come up with the house scenario there, but interesting figure, sort of. The very brief Wikipedia article on Robin Bernstein is this. Born in Bridgeton, New Jersey, and let's see, she is 66 or so, born in 1953 in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Normal career up through college and graduation, master's degree from, moved down to the Washington, D.C. area. American University grad, then a master's from GW. And working as a Democrat, served on the transition team of Jimmy Carter, who Donald Trump hates. Then worked around the Democratic Party until 1986, when she became a Republican, right at the height of the Reagan years. She then became a founding member of Trump's Mar-a-Lago Club. I guess had migrated down to Florida by that point, and has been his insurance agent for many years, leading to concerns about potential conflicts of interest, especially given the Trump organization's pursuit of a licensing deal in the Dominican Republic. So there is that, for one thing. I wonder if she was the insurance agent for Mar-a-Lago. That would have put her in the middle of what are alleged to be fraudulent claims from damage from, Hurricane Andrew all the way back then. Remember that he claimed this enormous damages from the hurricane, and yet then had which one was it? Don or Eric's wedding there like 3 days later, and everybody was like, yeah, I don't remember there being any damage from Hurricane Andrew. But Robin Bernstein slipped them a couple bucks, I guess, and then became ambassador to the Dominican Republic. Why? We're not really sure. Like, what was her attraction to the Dominican Republic? That part I haven't been able to pick up on yet. But what can I tell you? Plenty of pictures of her as a socialite flitting about Palm Beach and I guess now the Dominican Republic. Now back to Lana Marks. Let's see. What do we have on this one? Let's see. She talks about how she's deeply honored to be nominated as ambassador to South Africa. And, oh yes, right. The dramatic chapter of her life that brought her to Palm Beach in the 80s. An incident in which she charged Bermuda kicked them out because they were anti-Semitic. And then we got into the whole idea about, okay, what they really were kicked out for was, ironically enough, immigration violations. So naturally you would get here and you would sign up with the president who's anti-immigration, and that they had brought a nanny with them and just wondered whether it triggered anything for anybody that she was a white South African who had, left the country for whatever reason and brought a nanny with her from South Africa, black woman. I assume it's a woman. I'm not 100% certain. But, yes, Lucia King. So, sounds like it was. Lucia King, a black South African nanny, as they put it here in Haaretz. So that was in 1982. So, the future of apartheid, I don't think certainly wasn't settled at that point. Things were embroiled in controversy, and maybe you could see the writing on the wall, but okay. She and Neville Marks took off from South Africa in 1982 and made their way through various immigration violations to Bermuda. But yes, we were pointing out that it's very difficult to buy expensive property as a vacation home or even a permanent home in Bermuda unless you are a citizen, or I guess you're on the path to citizenship. And my supposition here is that they filled out paperwork in order to buy their house and maybe lied about their immigration status to do it, and then were found out and left and said, it's because we're Jewish. Because I don't know whether they thought that at the time or whether they were like, I'm being interviewed by Haaretz, so I can explain this by saying it was anti-Semitism. So anyway, the Marxes protested their innocence at the time, saying King had arrived in the capacity of a friend of the family and a non-working house guest a few days after. Oh, I see. Was the immigration violations were with respect to Lucia's arrival in Bermuda and maybe not theirs. Interesting. So found guilty on 2 counts of submitting false immigration documents for employing Lucia King. So they were lying about her immigration status, which is somewhat less ironic, except that it's really the same story that we have here in the United States. I hate them Mexicans, except for the ones that I got working for me for dirt. So, that same hypocrisy. They protested that they were innocent. She was just a friend of the family, a friend of the apartheid-era South African white people who left South Africa for Bermuda and brought a good friend with them, and then was like, you know what you should do? Be our nanny, because you're such a great friend. I'm sure that happens all the time. Probably happened in Mar-a-Lago. They were there for dinner, and Trump was like, you guys are great friends. Boom, you're my nanny. Raise Barron, or whatever. Happens all the time among rich people, I'm sure. Well, anyway, she was a non-working house guest. After a few days after which they said they applied for her to work for them. So she came, she stayed, and after 3 days, as they say, fish and house guests, both begin to smell or stink at that point. I don't know. I forget the exact terminology here. But then what you do with them is, if they're fish, throw them out, and if they're house guests, make them employees, make them your nanny. I think that's a well-known custom. Well, anyway, that's what they did, and with her documentation in legal order, they proceeded to work for her as a nanny. Wow, okay. So let's see. They applied for her to work for them with her documentation in legal order. According to the Bermuda Royal Gazette, they said they had not been informed of the charges in a timely fashion, questioned, or even given a chance to counter them before legal action was taken against them. How rude of the sovereign government of Bermuda. The next year, in July 1983, the couple's conviction was cleared on appeal by the country's Supreme Court after 10 minutes of deliberation. Okay. Which found that there was no proof that Lana Marks had provided false documents for King's employment and that the jury had been misdirected in the original trial. Okay, so what's the problem? They were represented in their appeal by Lois Brown Evans, the country's first female lawyer. Wow. Imagine that. In 1983, the first female lawyer in Bermuda. She went on to become the leader of Bermuda's Progressive Labor Party and its first female attorney general. That's very nice. Now, the picture used to illustrate the article at this point explains the tennis thing. What we're looking at is a picture of Lana Marks marching with her husband, Dr. Neville Marks, as when she competed for Bermuda, representing Bermuda in the Maccabiah Games in Israel, which is sort of like, this is something I've actually heard of. Sort of like a Olympics for Jewish athletes, sort of, I guess. But international competition, very much conducted like the Olympics. Of course, the competition is not necessarily at as high a level, but there you have it. So she had transported herself to Bermuda and successfully rose to be able to represent Bermuda's tennis team in the Maccabea game. So I don't know how hard that was to do. I'm sure she's a good tennis player, and she could beat me. I'm not a tennis player. But I don't know what to say. I guess maybe the pool of internationally competitive Jewish tennis players in Bermuda might not have been very large, I'm guessing. But all right, congratulations. And she bronze medaled, so she beat other Jewish tennis players from around the world. Yay. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. All right, so moving on here with the rest of the article. When the decision was announced that the couple's names were cleared, according to the newspaper account, Marks burst into tears and rushed from the courtroom. In excitement, I assume. But the relief was short-lived. Oh, no. Under the cloud of this accusation, Dr. Marks, who was the only psychiatrist on the island, really, and had been acting medical director of the island's psychiatric hospital, was refused permission to work there. And the island has been overrun by lunatics ever since, I guess. And very unsuccessful place. Nobody has their offshore bank accounts there anymore or vacations in this dream island in the middle of the Gulf Stream and the Atlantic. So that serves them right. In 1983, a story in the Jewish Floridian of Fort Lauderdale said the couple attributed their plight to their persistent efforts to become Bermuda's first Jewish residents to attain citizenship. I guess that answers the tennis question. They probably could have made the bobsled team as well. They believed they were targeted by the government for these efforts and that anti-Semitism played a role in their legal woes. And who knows, maybe somewhere it could. It's not beyond belief. It's just, you also kind of got caught doing something illegal. Dr. Marks had applied for citizenship repeatedly after living on the island for more than a decade and becoming a lay leader of the island's tiny Jewish community. The Florida newspaper quoted him as saying, "It's only when you live here that you learn about the subtle forms of anti-Semitism." It is entirely possible. Lana Marks told the paper in 1983, "We would like Jews in America to know what's going on here. Jews are not allowed to own businesses and are banned from many clubs," which again sounds like a rough life, until you're like, well, what do you, for instance, you personally, right now, listening to the show, know about how hard it is to get into clubs in Bermuda, right? I mean, and how do you find out? Because you're the kind of person who lives in Bermuda in an expensive property and plays tennis and at a high level and wants to go clubbing. It's not super rough down there. Anyway, I have won almost every tennis tournament on the island, she says about herself. The Mid-Ocean Tennis Club would not even acknowledge my application, and the Coral Beach Club, which has no Jewish members, turned me down. Again, we don't know how big this Jewish community is there. It's obviously very, very small. Fiona Elkinson, the current leader of Bermuda's Jewish community, told Haaretz via email that while she personally did not live on the island in the 80s, the Markses had been a controversial couple at the time. She said that she had been told that they caused a huge split in the community. They were not good for the Jews of Bermuda. Elkinson added that she knows of other cases in which the work permits of foreigners were not renewed after they were found guilty of committing an illegal act. I would imagine that's probably the case. Born Lana Bank in 1953, Marks was raised in East London on South Africa's, not East London, England, but East London, the section of South Africa's Eastern Cape. Born to an affluent and socially prominent family, her father, the late Alec Bank, anybody, had immigrated to South Africa from Lithuania as a child. He was a property developer and a builder and a leader in a local Jewish community. While studying business at the University of, in South Africa, Witwatersrand. Is that right? That would be Whitewater, right? Whitewatersrand? They say white or wit? W-I-T. Anybody? Afrikaans? No. Anyway, while studying there, she met her future husband, who was working temporarily in South Africa. Let's see. And, look at this. Here's another picture of her in the Maccabea Games, this time with her bronze medals, which she won not as a competitor for Bermuda, but for representing the United States in the 1989 Maccabea Games. Anyway, as to the two of them, after a whirlwind courtship, they married in 1976 and moved to Bermuda, where she volunteered in hospitals and played tennis. Wow, another rough life. She had been a top player in South Africa and was ranked number 1 in Bermuda, which again, like 6 people. When they were forced to leave after the legal debacle, Lana Marks had a 2-year-old son, Martin, and was 8 months pregnant. Ultimately, though, the couple's forced relocation to the United States, where Marks became a citizen in 1994, turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It very often is. Coming to America, Palm Beach was where she launched her handbag business. Then it goes on to discuss that portion of her career. And really, honestly, I've spent too long on this person. But there you go. Anyway, Marks first met Trump on the Palm Beach social scene in the 1990s, became a member of his stupid, but they say exclusive Mar-a-Lago club in 2010, ahead of the wedding of her daughter, Tiffany Marks. They wanted to use Mar-a-Lago, I'm sure, as a venue. Got to become a member, whatever. The event for 300 included pyrotechnics, 2 cocktail receptions. I wonder if it was segregated. A 6-tiered wedding cake and 6 different hues, and an ice sculpture inlaid with the Tiffany blue initials of the new couple. That sounds very Mar-a-Lago. All orchestrated by the detail-conscious mother of the bride, the Palm Beach Daily News reported. That's just the kind of place it is. We'll leave it there, I think, because but it gives you a very interesting flavor for a tangent I really didn't think we were going to go on. I appreciate it. Thanks very much to Scott for sending me that one. It's amazing. Also, by the way, got from Scott Joe Scarborough's father's name, and though that really doesn't matter at all, I thought I would at least acknowledge that I had gotten the information if it was bothering you. George Francis Scarborough, a businessman, but Scarborough's from Florida, so I'm just sort of curious whether there's any other connections there. Anyway, let's move on. There's more. There's crazy stuff. I will try and run through a few extra stories for you. And on a housekeeping note, I will be unable to do a live show tomorrow, Friday, and we're at a critical juncture, and I would really like to have something new and fresh for you. And of course, missing Friday means missing our time with Ian Reifowitz. I'm going to give it every effort to try and pre-record a show for you tomorrow, and including a segment with Ian in which we'll both have to pretend it's tomorrow. Plus, I have been holding on to a submission from our good friend Darwin, who has sent us some information that he's read out of his favorite publication, which has recently been saved from an untimely death by the great military-loving hero Donald Trump in Stars and Stripes, his favorite paper, Darwin's, about transgender issues in the military and Trump's efforts to, of course, destroy all progress made there. Important topic, not at the top of the news, given that the president is murdering people left and right at the moment, but I've been holding it for a while, and it would be a great relief to me to fill time with tomorrow's show, which is difficult to produce after doing a full show today. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much to Darwin. And let's make it a pitch, as we often do daily on the podcast during our commercial breaks. You too can join in the fun and help out when things get tight and I need to come up with good, solid content quickly without having to do it myself. So I always appreciate the contributions, and it's always great to hear from Darwin, and I'd love to hear from more of you about that subject. All right, but moving on to hit a couple other news highlights. Let's just put this one on the record. I assume that it will be subsumed by other stories, but who knows? Maybe not. Reuters reporting as an exclusive, Russian state hackers suspected in targeting Biden campaign firm, according to certain sources. Who are those sources? Well, they're at Microsoft Corporation, which is really kind of interesting. Not an intelligence community source, which will be amazing to watch the Trumpsters say that how can you trust that when it's not government intelligence? What is this idea that private corporations can be just making up intelligence and spilling it out there? Well, you've been trying to do that for a long time, and I guess it just doesn't go that well for you in every instance. Microsoft Corporation recently alerted one of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's main election campaign advisory firms that it had been targeted by suspected Russian state-backed hackers. According to 3 people briefed on the matter, the hacking attempts targeted staff at Washington-based SKD Knickerbocker, a very prominent campaign strategy and communications firm working with Biden. Most progressives wish that they weren't. SKD Knickerbocker is a place that pops up in the news all the time, very often in connection with unsavory work that they've often done with very middle of the road to conservative leaning, corporate friendly Democrats, and people get upset about it. Whatever. It's not a name that carries a positive connotation for me, and maybe not for you either. And that's important only because I bring it up as why would I believe that they were targeted for hacking by the Russians? And my one answer, of course, is the Russians will probably hack anything they can. And 2, it would be a great place. It would be a place where stolen documents would be of great value, perhaps strategically if they were campaign documents. But even if it was just emails getting stolen again, WikiLeaks types would love to have damaging emails from prominent consultants at SKD Knickerbocker, and it would probably fall to them to distribute them and take the heat off of the Russians who wouldn't want to distribute them directly. Although at this point, why not? Anyway, a person familiar with SKDK's response to the attempts said the hackers failed to gain access to the firm's networks. They are well defended, so there's been no breach, the person said. SKDK Vice Chair Hillary Rosen declined to comment. A Biden spokesman did not respond to a request for comment. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the allegations as nonsense. Moscow has repeatedly denied using hacking to interfere in other countries' elections. U.S. intelligence agencies have raised alarms about possible efforts by foreign governments to interfere in the November presidential election. Investigations by former special counsel Robert Mueller and the Senate Intelligence Committee both concluded that affiliates of the Russian government interfered in the 2016 election, obviously. Anyway, one of the sources says it wasn't clear whether Biden's campaign was the target or whether the hackers were attempting to gain access to information about other SKDK clients. SKDK Managing Director Anita Dunn was a White House communications director during the Barack Obama presidency and serves the Biden campaign as a senior advisor, much to the chagrin of many progressives, as it turns out. The attempts to infiltrate the place were recently flagged to the campaign firm by Microsoft, which identified hackers tied to the Russian government as the likely culprits, according to 3 sources briefed on the matter. The attacks included phishing, a hacking method, you know all about phishing, looking to get people to disclose their passwords, as well as other efforts to infiltrate the network, 3 sources said. A Microsoft spokesman declined to comment, interestingly enough. The company, which has extraordinary visibility on digital threats via its widely used Windows operating system and cloud services, I don't really need to do any more advertising for them. They've taken on an increasingly active role in calling out state-backed cyber espionage. In 2018, the company launched its Defending Democracy initiative, and I am doing advertising for them now, aimed in part at safeguarding campaigns from hackers. SKDK is closely associated with the Democratic Party, having worked on 6 presidential campaigns and numerous congressional races. In addition to its current work for Biden, the firm in 2018 worked on successful governor's races in Kansas and Connecticut. Okay, so just a little bit of extra background there. Just wanted to make you aware of that one. Worth doing. I think the other big news of the day, which I don't think I even have anything in my in pocket about it, which is rather wild. But we'll acknowledge that A whistleblower report has been filed with who was it? The House Intelligence Committee, alleging that all sorts of shenanigans at the Department of Homeland Security, and wow, I don't even know if I can round them all up off the top of my head, but let's see. Allegations included getting directives from above to stop investigating domestic right-wing terrorism. Also, directives to stop investigating Russian interference in the 2020 election and instead to focus on or invent interference from China and possibly Iran instead. And also directives apparently to bolster the claims that the proposed, or maybe even purported, border wall project between on the southern border between the United States and Mexico, which just isn't getting built, period, that it was the justification for it could and should be bolstered by claims that it and other measures of increased border security were successfly blocking infiltration of the United States by known and suspected terrorist groups. As I gathered from a brief skim of the materials, which I didn't put aside for some reason, but we'll go get for you, though you've likely seen something about it already. The idea was that, we're not actually intercepting a whole lot of known or suspected terrorists this way. So it would be a pretty poor example of justification for the wall or any other border barrier. And basically the insistence was, why don't you just say it anyway? And I guess that's where the line ended up getting drawn, and people were refusing to comply with this stuff and filed a whistleblower's report instead. So, all right, let's see. Let me see if I can't grab the latest news about that. I'm sure that would be at top of the news. Whistleblower details alleged politicization of intelligence at DHS, declares ABC News. And I'm sure that at this point it has received front page treatment at Daily Kos by now too, but that I have not yet rounded up and put aside. Anyway, time for us basically to wrap things up here. We've only got a minute or two left before we've got to jump off and hand things over at the moment on Netroots Radio to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Right now, the West Coast Cookbook is charcoal broil everything. Apparently, that's the directions from them. But like I said, we're going to give a shot at recording something for you for Friday, and maybe we can touch on some of that. That, of course, at least part of what's being alleged by the whistleblower's report from DHS touches on a subject that we very recently discussed with Ian Reifowitz, and I'm sure he'd like to return to it in our discussion. And I guess tomorrow, if it all goes well, you'll hear the results of that discussion. We also perhaps can turn back to the New York Times' roundup of the many ways in which Trump's billion-dollar campaign lost its cash advantage, not just in grift of the legal community, which we discussed the day before, but several other ways in which most of the campaign funds appear to have leaked through their fingers or somehow found their way into, I guess, Trump's family's pockets. And of course, let's see, might be time also to look into other weird diplomatic dealings around the globe by the Trump administration, such as it is, and claims of diplomatic victories, in particular those claimed by Jared Kushner as marks of great achievement for the Trump administration. The weird deal as between Israel and the UAE, which apparently now, when people were scratching their heads about why was that so important, and apparently where it is now, all of a sudden now that that deal is done, they're looking to use that to grease the skids for Who can guess? Anybody? That's right, gigantic arms sales to the UAE. How amazing is that? And then another one that sort of evaded our radar, another weird Israel inclusive strange development, a deal between Kosovo and Israel that apparently the diplomats concluding negotiations on behalf of Kosovo were surprised to find out that they had just signed documents they thought, I guess, was some other sort of agreement with the United States. Surprised to find out that, hey, the document, it claims, Donald Trump claims, actually committed Kosovo to recognizing Jerusalem as the one and only capital of Israel and moving their embassy there, just as the United States famously did not so long ago. Very weird development. We'll have to dive back into that one. I hope I can deliver on my promise in about an hour from now in real time, and tomorrow for those of you listening that way.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, time now, as I said, for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. We'll take what we can get from Justice Putnam at this point. I guess very real danger that, like, Netroots Radio at some point burns down in the West Coast fires. We hope everything is going well there, and stay safe, Justice. We'll take whatever dispatch you can afford for us gratefully. Next.